Hi there, this is ESR01 Carolin speaking from quarantine, sitting in front of the mandatory bookshelf, trying to speak to you a bit about my research. I'm part of the Fatigue Project, and one of the main issues we look at is populism. Now, populism is a term that we can find everywhere these days. It's a buzzword, probably not as prominent these days as COVID or Corona, but definitely one of the big ones. So, do we mean by this? A lot of people use it just to insult their political opponents. It's kind of a catch-all phrase for anything that's referring to simplifications. But also right-wing politics sometimes is just referred simply as populist. I think the term is used quite often in confusing ways. It's often confused, and it quite often also includes the so-called normative approach to it. So there is some kind of moral judgment included when we speak about populism. Populism as an ideology was coined by the Dutch political scientist Casmudde. He defined it as a thin ideology that at its core pitches the corrupt elites against the pure people. In a democratic system, that means that the will of these pure people often kind of trumps democratic, no pun intended, democratic procedures, which means that if democratic procedures are standing in the way to fulfill this alleged will of the people, that means that we can get rid of them, or we can at least, bend the rules. As I am German, let me compare populism as a thin ideology to bread. So basically, this thin ideology distinction between the pure people on the one side and the corrupt elites on the other side is like your plain bread. It's pretty, it's nourishing, but it needs spreads to get exciting. And this is where other ideologies come in. So spicing up your bread can be done through various ideologies. There can be, as in many Latin American cases, left-wing ideology that is used to thicken this populism. But there is also nativism that is used, and that's something that we're going to look into a tiny bit more. As a thin ideology, populism doesn't necessarily speak about gender. This is something that Casmudde himself later argued in an article has to be looked into more depth. Otherwise, we risk having a blind spot when it comes to the construction of the pure people and the corrupt elites. But in a parenthesis, what is gender? It's one of these topics and issues that a lot of people get really confused with. So let me just try to sum it up a bit here. Gender does not refer to your biological sex, but so to speak to your social sex. This is constructed, and it basically means and encompasses all the characteristics that are read by society as either feminine or masculine, and that can vary. And on a side note, gender is fluid and it's not binary, but it's actually more like a spectrum. My own research focuses on Poland. And here gender plays a big role when we construct the pure people and the corrupt elites. In 2015, when the National Conservative Peace Party came into power, these corrupt elites were on the one side the detached PO politicians that were kind of out of touch with an ordinary Polish life, but also European technocrats who didn't understand how Poland would work, but also increasingly feminists and queer activists. These are seen as alien, even if they're part of the own nation. The pure people are substantiated through nativism. That means that the right of the natives, the true Poles, trumps any minority rights. This obviously highlights the role of mothers to reproduce the nation. In Poland, this is quite often substantiated through Catholic themes such as the Virgin Mary or the Matka Polka, that's really closely connected. But it also means that questions that touch on women's rights, such as reproductive rights, abortions, but also sexual education and contraception, as well as civil rights, such as queer rights, really challenge this conservative national image of the nuclear family, where mothers play a crucial role in national identity. Gender is relevant, therefore, in the construction of the pure people, but also of the policy issues that are dealt with in Poland and in other countries in the region. We've seen that the salience of these issues has increased massively, but it also shows that it has become one of the core battlefields between populist and non-populist actors. I hope this video sparked your interest in the work that we do at Fatigue. There is so much more to populism, there's so much more to gender. Some of my colleagues address some of these issues directly, some of them take a completely different angle. It's really fascinating research that we're doing. So check out my colleagues' videos, check out our research, and get in touch.